significant capital oversight, we're not going to see the capital improvement gains. My position is investors in the private sector will invest if there's a return on their capital. The challenge is, will that return on capital be easily managed through either the World Bank providing oversight on that capital, or through some third-party agency that is providing guidance and direction on the spend? I think that if there's guidance on the spend with the capital improvement projects, and there's anywhere from a 5 to 8 year return on investment, I think most major private marketers are going to jump into that space because they want greenfield. They want to be first to market. They want to establish their infrastructure and their distribution centers, and that's very attractive to a lot of private sector transportation firms. Next slide. So I think from an asset management perspective, aging fleets, used vehicles and parts are going to be a significant challenge. But again, it's capital investment. Fuel grid and fuel disposal and oversight on fuel disposal I think will be extremely important. Maintenance and service facilities, which we alluded to, which is to have the shops in the right locations, have a just-in-time model for shop and parts, and have them strategically located throughout the island to provide the services for those aging fleets. Primary and secondary roadways are a mess. Capital improvement would have to fundamentally lay out a redesign of their roadways, a resurfacing of their roadways, tolls, guardrails for their rail, and basically have a fundamental streamlined rail and roadway system to support basic primary transportation of goods and services. Port regulations and supplier protocols are going to be huge, but I think that'll just come with some form of regulation. You can't do one without the other. You can't do the spend, not have the oversight, and not have a regulatory agency managing the oversight, and not have this fear of political oversight on corruption driving decisions. Inbound and outbound freight management. It's nice for all of us to say we're 90 miles away, and because we've got the Port of Miami, that it affords us certain benefits and certain economies of scale to be able to manage freight out of Florida. I think the opportunity will be there, but I think like a lot of us, there's this perception of credit risk and the spend and how much are you willing, what's your tolerance level for managing and spending dollars in Cuba. The fourth piece there that I didn't really speak to is the culture. I think that 55 years of limited supplies and limited resources and limited infrastructure are not going to be addressed overnight. I mean, this is a multi-year, multi-decade project plan. And I think that obviously understanding ports, rail, air, and transportation are fundamentally one of the basic building blocks to rebuild Cuba. And I expect that if we're in a position, organizations here in the U.S., freight forwarders specifically, and 3PLs will make the investments and lay greenfield sites in Cuba with the expectation of getting a return on their logistic investments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jack Rose. We have now the privilege of presenting a dear friend, Manuel Manolín Cereijo, served as Associate Dean, Acting Chair, Acting Dean for the School College of Engineering at Florida International University. He also worked, my brother Gustavo, an electric engineer, worked for many years with Manolín at FIU, and we hold him very dear. So Manolín, welcome back. Cereijo will have few more minutes because he's talking about two subjects. So welcome, Manolín.
Good evening. Welcome, everyone. Yes, I have two areas, so I have double time, not because he said so nice things about me.
We'll see about that.
I will cover electrical energy systems and telecommunications. They are not only two very important infrastructure areas, but two very important industries. And they are very important because without electricity, you cannot move anything. No motors will move in any industry. No cooking devices will be in the hamburgers and so on. And without the telecommunications, you cannot communicate with anyone, and there will be no businesses. So that's why they are so important in this area. Now, before I start, and I have an argument at home with this about saying this or not this, all we're saying here is once Cuba has democracy, free enterprise, and liberty, not now. Okay, I want to be clear about that. Once everything is new there, we have democracy, which I think I finally will have it in spite of whatever who said that he was disappointed. I think we will. We will. The areas of concern in the power industry, electrical energy industry, will be power generation and power transmission. Power generation is what you are about, you can generate in the plants, and power transmission is what it gets from the plants to the consumers, businesses, industries, residences, and so on. That's the two important areas here. The next slide is just historical. That's the main power plants that Cuba now has. Of 14 plants that they had in 1989, now they only have 7. And out of those 7, you have about 3,000 megawatts of power out, round numbers, which is not enough. The next slides tell you the future investment in the Cuban power system in the long run. So not immediately after Cuba has free enterprise and industry being built, because that's impossible. The numbers that I want you to read are the bottom ones, the red line, which is $2,527 million for one type of plant, and $2,332 for another. That's up to the company or companies that want to take care of the Cuban situation. Obviously, we have a problem in here. The customers in Cuba are Cubans, of course, and they pay with pesos. And nobody wants to invest if you pay with pesos. So something has to be done fast so that they can pay with a decent money, so that you encourage companies to put plants in Cuba. The total installed capacity is the number that I'm showing at the bottom, which is about 4,900 megawatts. Really, it's now 5,000 because they installed a few new small plants in the last 3 or 4 months. But the problem is the efficiency. They have an efficiency of 65%. That means going from the plant to the residents to the businesses, they lose 35%. That's not allowed. That cannot be allowed. You should be about 85%. At least, and that's what one of the problems is, and that's why we need to invest also in transmission lines. That's what I mentioned that. What is what we need for the first 18 months? Once Cuba is already free, working people to create industry, we need 500 megawatts to be installed as fast as possible by whatever means. Maybe the government will have to do it until the private companies show interest in establishing in Cuba. But that's what we need. We need 500 megawatts, and we're talking about $433 million roughly. That's not too much for what we're talking about. For example, the main company in Florida, which I forgot the name, has 22,000 megawatts for 8 million people, roughly. These are round numbers, and I don't want the FNL people to correct me here, but kind of. And we're talking in Cuba, 5,000 for 12 million people. There is a lot of air conditioning here and many other things that they don't have in Cuba now, and they won't have for a while. To improve the transmission lines, that's what we need. The red number at the bottom is the main ones. You need to have 51,800 kilometers of new cables. And you need to have, or that will cost 1,930 million pesos. But that's good, because remember that 25 pesos is $1, so the equivalency there. You can do that in pesos, yes. But there is another important part to increase the efficiency to 85%, which are the substations. The substations are those small equipment that you see every once in streets and so on, fenced with something. Well, that's very important. And there you're talking about dollars, because you cannot pay that in pesos. And in the first 18 months, you're going to need about $11 million to put in there. Probably the new government will have to do it until you convince one of the companies to go there and start providing power. Privatization is what Nick was talking about. The red part is the one that I want you to take some interest. What I mean by that is first, it's going to be a very complicated problem. And that's for the lawyers, Eria and Nick, both, because the priest here is also a lawyer, by the way. And, but what I think is, it should be a system like we have now here, segmented by geographical areas. There might be 2, 3 companies in Cuba covering different geographical areas of Cuba. Now we'll go to the next topic, which is telecommunications. Telecommunications is also a very important industry that we need to go there, and I want to cover 5 areas. Telephones, fixed telephones, the one that almost nobody uses now, but you still have some fixed telephones at home. The mobile telephones and devices, the PCs or laptops or whatever you want to call it, the internet, and I mean real internet, not intranet, free, low-cost broadband internet, and TV. And I mentioned something at the end about what I mean by TV. Now, telephones fixed. In a period of 2 years, and I put here 2 years because remember, fixed telephones are not that important anymore. They are important maybe at offices, businesses, but not at homes. Cuba should get about 20 lines per 100 person. What that means relative, because that means nothing if I just tell it like that. In 1959, Cuba had 15 fixed telephones line per 15 persons. Now Cuba has 9 per 100 persons. Countries like Italy, Spain, at that time, in 1959, had less than Cuba at that time, and now had much more. So, yes, we need to have at least 20 lines, fixed line per telephone, per 100 persons. Mobile devices, after a free enterprise system is established, we should have at least 6 million mobile devices. Right now, we have 1.1 million devices. Oh, I didn't change it? Okay. Victor, how come you didn't help me with that? Now, this is a figure that goes up a lot, but a lot of these things that we talk about here, sometimes if the person explaining this doesn't put that private or personal intuition. You have to go to know the Cuban personality. How many here have mobile devices? Everybody. And I don't want to ask how many of you have 2 devices, 2 mobile devices, you see. That's the character of the Cubans. If Cuba had progressed without this 54 years, now we will have everybody in Cuba talking over the mobile devices, and that will happen. But of course, mobile devices will not be given free by the government. At least I don't want that. It will have to be purchased and paid by the Cuban people. And for that, they have to reach a good economic situation. When I say 6 million mobile devices, I don't mean go to the store and give it free. No. They have to be able to buy it and use it and pay for it. Okay? But they are needed. PCs, again here, laptop, PCs, they are very important if you want an industrial development. They are very important if you have to educate your people. I say here that no less than 5 million PCs in the first year or so after the Free Cuba is in place. Again here, I think we will be in the right track because everybody's loving to have a PC in Cuba and be able to use it. Right now, there are 65,000 PCs in Cuba. That's less than almost in every other Latin American country and island in the Caribbean. So the number of 5 million, it looks like a lot, but it's not. It's about 40% of the Cuban population. Internet users. First of all, I mean real internet. I don't mean intranet. I don't mean limited broadband internet. I don't mean costly internet. But here again, it's not a matter of giving this free to the Cuban people. The Cuban people has to reach a certain economic level to be able to pay for the use of the internet. But they cannot charge astronomical prices for the internet, where usually 1 hour costs 3 times what the Cuban earn now to use the internet. So that's not a gift either, but it's important that Cuba uses internet a lot. And right now they have 1,002,000 users, which is not that much compared to other countries. And I'm saying that after 1 year of this free system established in Cuba, we should have about 4 million users. This is the actual fiber cable optic that was constructed from Venezuela to Cuba through Jamaica. That's in place. It runs for 1,600 kilometers. It cost $64 million. It has a capacity of 640 gigabits, but it's not used by the people. It's used by the military, by the elite, by the government. The people keep using the old system, and that's because they use this, they install this for safety reasons. To be able to call without being heard by the NSA, like they say now, because it's more difficult to listen to. When you go to fiber optic, it's possible, but more difficult than to listen to when you are going through satellite. And that's the only reason that they did it. And Cuba installed 10,000 kilometers of fiber optic cable also. And that cable provides Cuba the capacity right now to communicate with Europe and the United States through Jamaica. They go from Cuba to Jamaica, then Jamaica goes to Spain, and from Spain goes to the United States, and so on. But we should have a cable, a fiber optic cable, installed from somewhere in the United States, maybe Key West or near there, to Cuba. That's a much smaller distance, 210 kilometers of water. It should have a capacity of around 2 terabytes. 2 terabytes is 10 to the 12. Now that you're used to hear about the deficit and whatever, that's nothing. 10 to the 12 is peanuts compared to that. But it cannot be installed by the government. It has to be installed by private company. So we had to give them a reason, a motivation, a business reason. Let's install this so that people in Cuba can use it and business can prosper. And that's a plan for a fiber optic cable. In privatization, it's the same thing. I would say the same method that we have here in Florida or in the United States. Verizon, AT&T, whatever, all these companies to establish there and do business as whoever is better, cheaper, and so on. That's the idea there. The television industry. I'm going to mention very little about this, and this deserves another 7 minutes for someone. I asked my good friend Guillermo Alvarez to do this, and unfortunately he passed away. He was going to do it, and we will have here a very important presentation had he done it. But Cuba now has 2.64 million sets. That put Cuba in the 62nd place in the world. I'm saying that after 2 years, 3 years of free enterprise, at least 8 million TV sets should be in Cuba. But again, if they can buy it, if there are stores that sell it, that's the key thing. And to do that is what we're here to promote industry, to promote the economic development of Cuba so that all this can happen. The television industry, Hispanic television industry in the United States, is divided in that category that you see there, kind of. Telenovelas, about 65%. How many here see telenovelas? Nobody? News, entertainment, and other whatever it is. That's what it needs to be amplified, because this is a very important industry for many reasons. It will produce money to Cuba. It will expose the new prosperous Cuba to the world, so that people can get involved and say, hey, I want to travel to Cuba.